After his victory at Vicksburg, Abraham Lincoln really liked the fighting tenacity of Grant. And Grant's going to be promoted to the head of the Army of the Potomac. Essentially, he is going to be organizing and orchestrating the entire movements of the Union Army at this point. So he's the top dog now. And that's important for Lincoln because in 1864, this is an election year, and there was no guarantee that Lincoln was going to win re-election. People in the North were upset about the way the war was going. It seemed like it was dragging on forever. Unpopular presidents during wartime, that's not going well, tend to be unpopular. So he was looking for somebody that could turn the war around, somebody that would be able to make a victory possible. And Grant was that man for him. Now, Grant is going to implement what's referred to as total war. There are two parts to this. The first part of total war is that they're going to make life hard for civilians. And there's a reason for that I'm going to get to in a minute. But this idea of total war also requires a constant military offensive. No more attacking than retreating until the army was ready. It's going to be this constant movement, which is going to earn Grant a reputation as being something of a butcher with his men, because he recognized that the northern population advantage would be they could resupply their troops and refresh their troops whenever they wanted with new recruits. The Confederate Army could not. About 80% of the people that joined the Confederate military were eventually going to die or be wounded. However, that said, Grant had a much lower mortality rate in his military than Lee. So he's not really the butcher that history makes him out to be, especially the Lost Cause mythology. Now, constant offensive, but total warfare is also important by making life hard for the civilians, because the goal is to raise desertion rates for the Confederate Army so that less people are going to be fighting. In all of this mess, Grant's promoted, the war is still going on. We have a situation that I cannot not talk about, and that is the Fort Pillow Massacre. And I know that sounds silly, but Fort Pillow was a location, it was a fort. Some Union soldiers were going to be holed up there. They're surrounded by the Confederates, and they surrender. And because most of the soldiers that were there were African American, the Confederates are going to murder 300 or so prisoners of war. They're just going to execute them, largely because they were black. The person that leads the Fort Pillow Massacre is General Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, who after the war is going to become one of the founders of the Ku Klux Klan. He's got statues in Tennessee still, by the way. As a result of the total war, this constant movement and offensive, after Gettysburg, Lee retreats into the South. Grant is going to switch the military strategy to eventually, he's going to start chasing Lee into the South. Lee is eventually going to dig trenches around Petersburg. He's going to hole up in Petersburg, and we're going to get actually a preview of World War I with trench warfare. Lee is surrounded by Grant. A siege is put into place, and Mary Chestnut, who was somebody that was at the Petersburg siege, said that in her diary that Grant's strangulation of Richmond and Petersburg was, quote, very disgusting and depressing to the spirits, which was kind of the point, because total warfare was trying to make life hard for civilians as well as the soldiers, so that everyone would be depressed, desertion rates would go up in the military, and eventually the South would quit.